Let me ask you about the theory behind the lowering of the corporate tax rate. If the corporate tax rate goes down, how do you know a company is going to put it back into wages? A lot of money from companies has gone to shareholders. Most
studies show that when you lower that the tax on businesses is taken out of wages. So the point is,
actually, isn't there quite a lot of debate about that?
Let me say it this way: should we be taxing American businesses at much higher tax rates than our foreign competitors are taxing theirs? This business is taxed as high as 40+%. And their competitors are taxed on average 22.5%. How does that help this business in global competition?
I guess isn't the debate that effectively the rate's actually quite lower than 40, and also I guess the question
that's
is
not actually always the case. Well, the point is we know we're taxing our businesses at much higher tax rates than our foreign competitors are taxing theirs. And here's the point, John: businesses are leaving America. The current tax code discourages making things in America. The current tax code says if you're good enough to be big enough to make money overseas, you can't even bring it back because of our tax laws.
You have spent your life thinking about tax reform. The other thing you've thought about is fiscal issues. Mm-hmm. Will this tax plan increase the debt?
It's going to be deficit neutral. That's the budget rules we use, which is called the Byrd Rule.
Yeah.
So this will have to be a deficit neutral tax bill. But we do fundamentally believe that this tax code and this tax reform will give us faster economic growth. Faster economic growth helps raise the economy, which raises revenues, and that helps us tackle the deficit. There's two things we got to do to get rid of this debt: deal with entitlements. That's why we're frustrated healthcare reform hasn't passed the Senate yet. Deal with runaway spending, but also grow the economy. This helps grow the economy. So if you're asking me whether it's going to be deficit neutral tax reform, that's what it has to be for us to be able to pass the bill.
After 10 years, so it will. So, but what about the debt in terms of the additional money to the debt from this? Not deficit year to year, but overall.
If this results in giving us a faster economic growth, that will help us reduce our debt.
What a lot of people who've known you for a long time and have worked on these issues, when they hear you say, if this gives us growth, they say he's gone to the dark side.
I think it's the bright side, which is economic growth.
Sure, but they say the growth of the kind that we'll need to fund this is just beyond the real reality.
Two things. You got to have tax reform to get faster economic growth. Faster economic growth is necessary for us to get our debt under control. But you also have to reform entitlement programs.
Could you tie entitlement reform to this, as some in the Freedom Caucus want?
You could, but I think we would kill tax reform if we did, because let me just show you one piece of evidence. The Senate can't get health care out of the Senate. So if we put something that has been proven to fail in the Senate to tax reform, we would kill tax reform. So why would we do that?
Well, that leads us to politics. In the Affordable Care Act, it didn't make it through in the Senate. Why is it going to make it through in the Senate this time?
You talking about tax reform? Mm-hmm. I think it will make it through for a few reasons. Number one, we did this on the front end. We negotiated a framework so that we all agree what this needs to look like at the front end. In healthcare, what we did was we passed a bill in the House, and then the Senate looked at our bill and decided to go a different direction, and here we are. We have more consensus on tax reform as Republicans, and we have less consensus on healthcare reform as Republicans.
I don't hear you talking about working with Democrats on this.
We talk to Democrats all the time, actually.
But do you work with them on this?
We do work with Democrats, but we're not going to give Chuck Schumer the ability to filibuster this bill because we think that would derail tax reform. Do we want Democrat involvement? Absolutely. Did the president have Democrats in the Ways and Means Committee in the White House 2 days ago? Yes.
Do you worry the president will go off and work with the Democrats?
I think he should work with Democrats.
On tax reform?
Well, I don't think you're going, if not on a filibuster, I think it would be a big mistake if we didn't use reconciliation, because we're basically dooming tax reform. But do we want Democrats to work with us on this? Of course we do. He had Joe Donnelly on the plane yesterday going to Indiana, which, by the way, I really fundamentally believe some of these Democrats from some of these states are going to vote for this. Look, Indiana, #1 state for manufacturing. This tax reform so much helps these kinds of manufacturers. So I think when people look at their constituents, tax breaks for middle-class families, making manufacturing more competitive, helping businesses stay in America, creating more jobs and faster economic growth, I got to think that some Democrats are going to listen not to the party leaders, but to their constituents, and I think some of them are going to vote for this.